Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure for us in another episode of the Tennis Talk Coaches Voices. Have with us a great coach, a person who helped many players to develop the best possible tennis. Is with us, David Ray Ayme. Hi, Red. How are you?
I'm great, Fernando. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. It's an honor. I'm here myself, but I'm also here as a representative of the IMG Academy, and it's just an honor to be part of your show today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I know that you spent many decades of your life working with Nick and working in IMG Academy, doing a great work. And we know that IMG Academies are working hard to help many tennis players from all over the world. As you know, the Tennis Talk Coaches Voices is to present high-performing people like you, people who is helping other players to be the best version possible, and also to create a bridge between top leaders, top coaches like you, with coaches and tennis people from all over the world. To introduce Red, I have to say that he traveled more than 20 years with professional players. He coaches two number one in the world. One was Boris Becker, a former champion in Wimbledon, US Open, and many other tournaments. Marcelo Rios in 1995, another number one in the world. And he spent a long time working 10 years with Tommy Haas, a wonderful person, a wonderful player, and who reached the number two in the ATP, and also they did 3 Grand Slam semifinals and 13 ATP Tour titles. Red also developed thousands of players who were going to the college, having national championships and ITF international championships and many other things. He was working for 37 years on Bollettieri Academy, right now IMG Academies, and also did many clinics, symposiums representing IMG. Thank you, Red, to be with us again. And let me ask you the first question, which is a more personal question that people can know from your voice. Who is David Red Ayme?
Fernando, first, when you read this, I must actually pinch myself to think that this actually happened to me. And God has blessed me and put me in a position to be able to have accomplished way more than ever imaginable. And to be at the Bollettieri Tennis Academy, now in the IMG for so long, and being able to deliver for the company and everyone, helping all the students, is truly remarkable. Who is David Red Ayme? Is, I believe, a person that cares very much about helping people. And my whole purpose for wanting to go into coaching was to help people. And it was just a vehicle to do that. And without the support system of IMG, I don't think I could have been anywhere successful a coach. So it's all in one, this whole holistic approach that I am able to transfer to the students. And I think that has made me a better coach. And my whole motivation for being here today is I hope I can inspire one person, one coach, one person to go and be better. And if I do that today, then I would have done my task.
Yeah, absolutely. And Red, how was your process, to become a top coach? Because also, of course, let's say we have in our audience a lot of young coaches which wants to develop themselves. How was your story from the young Red coming out to the Bollettieri Academy, and then how was that evolution?
Yeah, so just a short version is I played all sports in high school, and I did play tennis, but I played baseball and other sports. Mm-hmm. And somehow I got on tennis in about 10th grade and decided that's what I wanted to do. And from a junior year of high school, I knew I wanted to be a coach. And I knew I couldn't play at the highest level. I was a player. So I was trying to transfer everything, even at a young age, to being a coach. So I walked on and played college tennis at Nicholls State University. Mm-hmm. I'm from Reserve, Louisiana, a town of only 7,000 people at the time when I was in high school. And to think that you could become a coach out of that is not really normal. It's not a normal path. So I was just so motivated to be a coach, and I helped the college team for a year and moved to work for Nick for a summer. He ended up asking me to stay on. And since then, I work one day at a time. And it just so happens it's totaled. I'm in my 37th year and loving it and really look forward to every day of coaching.
And then talking about that evolution, no, from a young Red, working with number ones in the world, also doing 10 years with Tommy Haas, which is an amazing career together, a wonderful time together. We remember many of those times with Tommy, you sit down on the bench. How many difficulties, how many opportunities you have to face on that evolution?
Just keep in mind, Fernando, my path was not easy. I was not a pro player, so I couldn't transition into coaching high-level players because I was a player. So I had to develop character traits. I had to develop coaching principles. I had to develop communication style that didn't come from being a player, that you get that credibility. Mm-hmm. So I had to do this all, and I had to find ways to do this. And one thing that's unique in our situation here is you have to compete. Okay. I think you have to compete as an athlete, but I actually believe as a coach, you have to compete. And when you're going to a tournament with a player, it doesn't matter if it's a pro or a junior tournament. I mean, you're trying to get that player to win. Really, it's what it is about. I know we talk about developing the style and everything, but really, I teach and coach from a win-first mentality.
Yeah.
Do whatever you have to do to put yourself in a position to win. Try to execute on the big points. And I took that coaching style from young Red in high school and tried to build that and learned so much in my early years. And to be honest with you, when you're faced with being asked to work with a top player, you've got to go back to what your core principles are. And, we learned it here with Nick: commitment, discipline, work ethic, compete every day. And that's what I've tried to help the players with, is be there every day and compete. And it comes back to my basics of when I first started coaching. And I knew that's what would drive me.
Absolutely. I mean, which is very, very important, because which is related by my next question. No, you have to develop that values, that principle also for you to be your best version. How was that?
Yeah, because I didn't have the playing background. I mean, I played in college tennis, okay, and I could play, but I didn't have all those years of tournament experience. But one thing I did do was, when I was younger, I studied coaches from a lot of different sports, and was blessed to be able to go hear some of them speak, whether it be at a athletic trainers conference that I went to. I wasn't an athletic trainer, but I went to the college coaches that were speaking. And I heard their motivational principle. And I said, well, if they're doing this in football and basketball, why can't those same principles work for me? And then I came to work with Nick. And to my amazement, his principles were the same as these famous football coaches or basketball coaches or whatever sport. And I was like, this is what we need to do to help the younger generation at that time. And Fernando, I want to tell you, nothing has changed today. 37 years, yes, we have to reach them a little differently, but the core values are the same today as they were then. And I'm sure that's what we're trying to give to the young coaches of the world today too.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it's very important, your message, Red, because we need to develop strong leadership values also in coaches to be able to manage, the project with different young players. And talking about that principles in terms of coaching, we can talk. We're gonna talk in the next question about what you are looking for on court. But talking in your experience, which are very important, let's say, human values for the coach, to work like a leader.
Right. So my biggest thing is, I feel like the student, the pro, the coach that I'm working with, or working on the side, or working together with, because remember, here at IMG, we work with a lot of different coaches. Any player that I've ever been with, many coaches are involved. We must all know that the player knows we care. That is the very first thing. Because if they don't know you care, it doesn't matter how smart you are, how intelligent you are, the science background, the communications. If they don't know you care, I don't think they're going to go the extra mile. But what's so interesting, Fernando, is if they know you care and they know you're there for their best interest and you're trying to help them, they will go to the greatest lengths to try to improve. And I believe it's the same for the coaches. So you must have a style. My style is energetic and fiery, right? But I can't push the students without them knowing I care, or else they think I'm just combating them. I don't want to be combative. I want to be a caring person, and then I can get them to go greater, same as the coaches.
Wonderful. And then I'm talking, which is more focused on what happened with the players, because also you keep working a lot of details with the players. We have you sent us some videos. Let's share a little bit about how we can work with the players. Let's share to our audience some of the videos.
This is a video of Taylor Fritz that I did at my house, and we're talking about one specific movement, the run around the backhand to hit the big forehand when the ball is sharp. And I think this is a critical movement pattern that we're trying to work with players of all levels, starting young. So when they get to be older, watch how he takes the step across in front. He does it twice. 1, 2, shuffles, loads, and then explodes into the ball. The modern day game is a physical game, physical, athletic, explosive. So my purpose for showing you the video, I take this video off my recorder on my TV, and I like to take it and show the students, and then we can work on executing it. I know that's a concept that's been around, but the modern day student sometimes learns better from seeing it. And this footwork is really important, something that I think once the students become a better player a little bit. This is a 10-year-old Daniel from California. Go ahead and play it. He's doing the exact same footwork. He splits, step across, explode into the forehand, recover. I make him do it a second time. So you see the progression from 10 years old up to a tour player in Taylor Fritz, the one example we used, using the exact same footwork with the exact same explosiveness on that one shot.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting also another picture that you sent us about Nole. What you can tell about it?
Yeah, look, remember, we're talking about the physicality of tennis these days, the athleticism. 6'6" guys like Daniel Medvedev, 6'3", 6'4". Maybe Novak isn't quite that tall, but look at the physicality of this. This is not something we grew up learning how to teach. He's almost on a split. He's playing one leg, and he's going to stick the left foot in the ground, and then he's going to do a little bit of a slap with the left hand. It's called unconventional coaching, right? So I want to try and give my students, anybody I'm with, a high performance player, a pro, the chance to be able to make these shots from the worst case scenario. And that's what you saw in the photo, the still photo of Novak, and take that to the court. Go ahead and play Alex de Minaur. This is in Wimbledon. Watch how he just sticks the outside leg there and hits a little bit of a slap shot from an awkward position. So what I'm trying to explain to you is these are unconventional principles that we think we need to incorporate into training, not all the time, but occasionally, so that the students, when put in that position, they can execute.
Yeah, for some reason it's not working, but
It's
anyway.
not playing right. Okay.
Anyway, it was very, very clear, your concept. Very, very clear. Talking about that, because of course, for some reason we need to keep working more. Let me touch something more technical, no? Because we have tennis people on the audience, we have parents, we have people, coaches from all over the world. In some reason, we need to go deeper in how we work in footwork, because probably we are not working enough in terms of detail and how is modern tennis, no?
Right. So, Fernando, it's estimated that, people have different variations they use to come up with it, but tennis is 85% footwork or movement, okay? So if that's the case, once a student can do the strokes, and even if it's a lower level student, then we need to focus a lot on footwork. We just showed 2 little patterns. Okay, we could spend 2 hours, 3
Yeah,
hours
yeah, of
talking
course.
about them all. It's just an example, and every coach must choose what they think is important. But I chose two today. One is an offense, footwork. Another one is a extreme defensive counterattacking footwork. And I didn't pick out one Carlos Alcaraz, but if there's any better example of the physicality of tennis today, the counterattacking skills necessary is the world number one at a young age, doing what we know Rafa and Novak did at an extremely high level of physicality. I don't know if I answered your question or not,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I think
absolutely,
footwork
absolutely.
is critical. And I think we need to do the conditioning to maintain that footwork for long periods of time.
Which is another aspect very important, no? Which is probably you can do it for 10 minutes. You need to do it for 3 hours, no?
Right.
Every day.
Fernando, check this out, though. When you're talking about the pro tennis right now, we all know about 2 out of 3 set matches in normal tournaments. But still today, when you go to the US Open, a tennis match that goes 5 sets in 4 hours, they did it in Australia, counted the amount of steps, and Novak and Rafa ran 5.5 to 6 miles. So we know that tennis is anaerobic. This is the biggest discussion it probably happens. But we also know that aerobic capacity, lung capacity, is critical to maintaining it over time. So our team of people here in this, what I like to call an ecosystem, is no longer just a support structure of a coach and a fitness trainer. Our whole ecosystem, which is the whole holistic approach of mental, vision, speed, agility, flexibility, yoga, nutrition, and the improvement of the student athlete, developing him as a person and spiritually, everything goes into why we can push them so hard to do these things for so long and for doing it at a high performance level. And it's not an easy ask. It's a very difficult ask. It's not something that everyone can do, but we try to do it as best we can to the student's potential. I think that's what we do as coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about only, like you say, you need many things, but let's going back to the mental side and also let's say the competitive culture of the top players. When you did work with many top players like Becker, Rios, Tommy, you face battles against the top players in the world. Different times, different generations. What do you think are very particular in terms of the Djokovic, the Nadals, the Federers, the Boris Becker, the Villanders, the Edbergs, are very particular, like champions, how they think, how they behave?
Fernando, I will speak to my time with those players in this case, okay? Because it's the best that I do. Most times I don't want to talk about myself in these situations. I want to talk about the whole thing. But in this case, when you think of one quality, all the players you named, they all dealt with pressure and how they deal with it. I think the modern day is don't put pressure on students. Don't put pressure on the players. Let them grow, let them learn. Yet at the same time, if you look at the real world in tennis, you must gain points and defend points, and you must try to win to gain more points. So the way these players, Boris dealt with pressure when he hired Nick, and I was the one assigned to go, his career was either going to go forward or it was going to end. And the agent at the time told me and Nick, he has to win immediately or y'all don't continue. So as a coach, I know what I'm going into. Nick knew what he was going into. How Boris handled that pressure internally and with the team and with everybody around him. How Tommy handled the pressure of following Boris Becker as the next German player coming up. Can you imagine the extra stress? It wasn't just about tennis. How they did it, how they were able to manage it and still go out and perform and deal with it. And I can tell you privately, one key characteristic is they talked about it up front. So you go to a tournament with Boris Becker, who has won Wimbledon 3 times. You're not telling him, oh, hit your forehand with a little more, spin. No, you're talking about his game style, executing it on the first break point you get, being dominant on it. And he's talking to you. That's what I need right now because the points are coming off. I need to be aggressive on the first break point. I'm just giving you one example, but they all dealt with pressure very differently. But there was this common theme that, number one, they said it. Number two, they embraced it. And then they wanted a game plan to go with it when the pressure was most. Even if they didn't win, they at least wanted that game plan. And those are the things that were all in common with all of them.
And also very important, they have a strong will, a strong desire to have success, and also to keep learning, no? Attention to details. They are incredible on that, no?
Incredible, all of them. You know, you could talk for hours on it, Fernando. It's just the ability to say, you know, we know when you say something, you have a better chance of achieving it. So they always would say, I mean, I was with Tommy when he was defending points. Hey, I got to go defend these points. Let's one ball at a time, but we're here to try to defend certain amount of points, not to get into the weeds of 250 or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But the modern day, we want them to embrace that pressure and then speak about it. Then you have a plan to go out and try to execute it. I think that's good, solid coaching advice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And coming from that years, because you spent 37 years in the academy, you know very well Nick and all the process, how he developed the academy, and then now IMG, which is a big one, probably the most important academy in the world right now. But going back to Nick, how was the pathway to be with him, you know, side to side, and learn from him? Which are the key aspects that you can describe in the leadership process of Nick?
Yeah, so the short answer on that is Nick did not ever wear a watch, as you know. He didn't wear a watch. He started when we had a player, and he ended when there was no one else to work with. So the process of being an employee with Nick, or even in the modern day world, in IMG today, is you have to be ready to do unbelievable things, because there's no real time. When the athlete needs help, you have to be ready to help them. That doesn't matter weekends or not. So you're going about Nick. Nick worked from 6 a.m. till 7 p.m, day after day after day, and his passion, his commitment to it, his intensity was amazing, right? So you had to mirror that. And when Nick was not there, you had to continue that same sort of psychology, same sort of method, same sort of work ethic. And I think it's still there today. We are striving. Look, any coach, doesn't matter whether you're with IMG or not, you have to outwork the player. Mm-hmm. We cannot let the player outwork us. No, I know we're not running for the ball, okay? But what we're doing is providing the atmosphere for them to get better. And I really believe, I'm sorry, I'm getting animated with my hands, because it's so important that we outwork those players. We give them everything we have. And at the end of the day, they know they had the best chance to improve. And that's a pro all the way down to the very first time they start to learn to play.
Yeah. Definitely Nick was a person who predicted with example, no?
Yes. I mean, Fernando, he is legendary, you know, and you'd stand next to him and just try to take in all the information. It was just legendary, his work ethic. You know, one point on Nick while you're here, Fernando, this is a good spot to say this short comment. I think the tennis analytics of today have vindicated Nick Bollettieri's coaching methods and style 40 years later. Because Nick internally had an instinct that points were quicker. And you can't imagine the criticism in the 80s, 90s, and early of all of us, because we were doing 2-ball drills or 3-ball drills or something, because Nick instinctively knew the points were quick. And if you got a short ball, you had to run around and put that ball away. And he would stand there and yell down, no, they should have put the ball away. Now look at what the analytics have come out with. Points under 3, points under 5. So 40 years later, you press one button on a computer and you get all the analytics that have vindicated the style, which I think is a testimony to Nick Bollettieri at the end of his life.
And absolutely, talking one more question about Nick, and I think he was very good, you know, creating an inspiration and motivation to each player, and knowing what to say to everyone, to each one.
Exactly. Yeah, it's always the communication is a part. I think if you're asking me, the modern day communication is a little differently. One of the things that Nick taught us and we apply today in the IMG Academy, and is no one player is the same. We have to coach each player individually. Yes, there's a group that we train in because we push each other with the group of 12 or 15, whatever it is. But in each one of those, we must communicate with them individually in a different little style. Some of them I have to talk to privately and say, hey, this is what I think you need to do to get better. And then some of them you could coach out loud from 3 courts away and they just respond, right? So it's a different way, but you have to reach them individually on the communication style. Remember, we are living in the world of social media where they're used to small clips like we saw. The 2 or 3 videos we showed were all under 8 seconds.
Yeah.
So everything is short, everything is quick to them. So you have to be able to try to adapt to the modern day, your communication style, to what the modern day is receiving outside the tennis court. I hope that point makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit later about communication process and how you did with the top players. But let me ask you about the IMG process, because you did work with the top players, but also you are working right now with players of 10, 12, 14 years. Now, how is the process in the academy? Which are the values and the key aspects that you are looking for?
So, like I said earlier, it's a holistic approach. We call it an ecosystem, okay? Because as a coach here, you could be called to go work with a touring pro, but as soon as that practice is over, you could be shifted to go help with a 10-year-old, just like you even saw in the video, or even a lower level player that's just learning. So as a coach, inside the academy, inside that ecosystem of all the different components of what we offer, you're trying to work within the system of that, okay? Now, what's interesting is Nick Bollettieri in '86 hired Jim Lair, who was on your program not long ago, was on it. Yep. As a sports psychology, he brought sports psychology into it. Here at IMG now, right? Fast forward, we have a sports psychologist embedded in our training groups that follow the students around most days. So we're able to, inside the big ecosystem of all the different things that I mentioned earlier, complement the tennis with the sports psychology. We call it mental conditioning coaching. The physical trainers are embedded inside the program. We have a new fitness head. His name is Jason Hetler. He comes from a track background, and he is a big believer in the cardio, in the extending out the aerobic capacity and lung capacity. So all of our tennis is matching all the different forms, including the school. And now a big deal is college placement. So NCSA is a part of IMG. So inside that, we have our college placement division. It's just everything is combined in one working system to try to help the student athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that it's producing very good results, because no, it's not only the way professional tennis, no? You can be in the college, you can be, and you develop hundreds of players going there.
Fernando, it's interesting right now because, the active, most recent data that I could find, I might be wrong, I don't know, is the average age of the top 100 pros in men are about 27 and a half. Girls are about the same for the women's tennis, roughly, just round the number off. So there's a bit of time between 18 and the average age that students have to occupy their time. And tennis is very expensive. And if you're not at the ready to break through young, like Alcaraz, many people are new using the college tennis to help mature, help get stronger, and then make the run at pro tennis out. And I think it's a good vehicle to do that.
No, and also you keep developing your mind, no? You keep
the whole
preparing yourself. I'm going to the topic about communication, because we know your style and how you create an environment of inspiration, passion, a lot of energy, looking for a future, be competitive. How was the process, let's say, in your experience with Tommy Haas, the 10 years? How was the process on the, let's say, firstly, let's talk about communication,
Okay, so communication to Tommy was the biggest challenge we had, because you got to remember, it was Nick, okay? Nick founded Tommy with his dad, so it was always working together through Nick at that time. The difficulty was I was on the road all the time. So I was managing Tommy's expectations, Nick's vision, and my own. So with Tommy specifically, I'm going to be honest with you. The biggest thing was telling him directly what the message was, whether he wanted to hear it or he didn't. At times he would get mad. At times he would say, "You're right." At times he would say, "Let's keep talking about it," but you knew where you stood. He knew where the coach stood. So the athlete, at the end of the day, sometimes he made his own decision, but you had to be able to talk to him. I think it benefited him a lot by that, because if you don't mind me including communication into adversity of him, is that okay to bring this up now?
Yeah, of course, because it's a very important aspect to speak about.
But Tommy, he faced adversity at number 2 in the world, having to have shoulder surgery at the prime of his career. And the communication to him was get the very best doctor you think you can do, set your timetable right, communicate it to the doctor and to you and everybody, and go day to day, and don't look back and saying, well, in a year from now, I'll be back playing. And he ended up having 13 months away from the game. He dropped to 0. And during this time, it was more communication than it was actively hitting. And the methods of communication were not only talking, but video. Even at that time, back in that time frame, we used video then to try to keep him remembering his style. I put it to music videos. I know it sounds like techie. I'm the least techie person in the world, but the communication to him sometimes was subtle, right? I would tell him, "Hey, I want you to go look at this. Then call me after when you're ready and we'll talk about it." So there's different styles of communication, but honesty, direct, and him again knowing that you were communicating him maybe something he didn't want to hear, but because you cared.
Yeah, this is very important, and also you support him because Tommy has had a lot of problems also around family situation, and many things happen in his career, no?
Yeah, I mean, look, his motorcycle accident of his mother and dad was traumatic. He had to miss time. Not to get into everything, but he had a situation which sometimes arises with players, and a contract that was weighing on him when he was playing at times. And you don't know exactly, you're not able, the whole world doesn't know what an actual player is going through. And he's communicating to you that the bigger the tournament, the more pressure he feels because of something. So you're having to not only calm the guy down, but actually give him communication thing to keep him, don't worry about that, worry about your execution, worry about your performance, that you're giving the right effort. And Tommy was fiery, as you know. He would scream at the box a lot. So you could never take anything personal that was said, because he was just fighting through nerves or whatever. And sometimes they're directed at you.
No, but absolutely. And also, we know that Tommy is an excellent people, very good person, a very good tennis leader as well. Yes. Running right now Indian Wells, and with probably the 5th tournament in the world, doing an incredible work. He is a very strong tennis leader.
And he's giving back to the community too. He does charitable things on the side too. And it's just he's a good example of a great playing career and a great person after.
Yeah, absolutely. In your experience, because tennis is a pressure game, no, you always have behind your name is a number when you are talking about rankings. Every point is counting. How to deal with pressure, and because we have parents, we have coaches, we have tennis people. What you can tell us about how to deal the process, which is very natural because in tennis, pressure is there, but how to deal with?
So I think the first way of dealing with it, to me, Fernando, is, again, it's a little bit old school and it's basic. But when you set a goal, it's got to be a ranking, right? I mean, I don't know myself personally as a coach any other way of what to tell a player if they don't set a ranking goal. That's what they're really trying to do. You have to chase the goal. You have to go for the points, and you have to achieve a ranking. So that's first. Secondly, is the personal where we're trying to create this, like I said, big support system, is making sure the player is accountable. It takes responsibility. to the day-to-day stuff that lead to chasing the ranking goal that's out there. And thirdly, as you previously said about communicating it, is communicate it to them verbally, communicate it through modern day forms of communication, whether it be social media, text, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that they know this is what we're working towards constantly. And I ask them to put it on a mirror. You know, if you post it out there, it's a better chance you're going to stay focused. And I think the champions you mentioned in your podcast today all did that amazingly well.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Red? Because you are a leader, you are a coach, but also you are keep working every day, same intensity, same passion, same professionalism, you know, in everything that you are doing. What do you think that coaches can implement right now to keep developing in the bigger way our game? What do you think we can?
Yeah. No, the develop the coaches. I think, Fernando, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just, I think number one, you have to have your own coaching style, and you need to really know it. Okay. Secondly, you have to have a really good idea of what you want to do to help the students play. So you have a coaching style, then you have a style of play of every individual student. I think when you look at a 10-year-old or a young player, they already start to establish a style very young in their games. So rather than just teaching them a forehand and a backhand, early on, teach them the style. So we showed a footwork tape earlier. Mm-hmm. That's an aggressive footwork tape. So the student learns early on, this is the aggressive style. This is the aggressive pattern to use for that. Likewise, if they're a defender, they need, if that's going to be their style of play, we must coach them into that style, not only coach them on the technique of how to hit the ball. Does that make sense for a young coach coming up? I think it's critical, those things. Finally, the work ethic you have to have a work ethic. I mean, we know tennis coaching is a difficult task, and I think you have to really be ready for that task.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple more questions, Red, because we know that we can speak by hours together. You know, it's our passion. We have a lot of love for our profession and our sport. Let me ask you about the coach of the future. You know, how do you think that the coaches need to evolve for the next 10 years? What do you think? Because which are the key factors or key values? You did mention many of them in our conversation, but looking for the future, because it's coming a lot of analytics, but analytics is not resolving the human being, you know, factor. You know, it's not only numbers. You know, you need to understand the person, like you say. You know?
So the coach of the future is, I think, got to be able to change with the physicality of the game. Because I gave you, you know, the one example of the photo of Novak, right? As a coach, I don't know how many times we're taught that the game is physical. So we want perfect technique, but we also have to teach the game the way it's being played now. So number one is be able to progress along with the sport. You need to follow trends, in my opinion, okay? As a coach, I might be teaching my same coaching principles, which we've talked about before already. You know, commitment, work ethic, discipline, and work ethic are my foundation. Mm-hmm. But I need to follow trends, right? What's a trend right now in the WTA Tour? They're serving more aces than any other year. So it's a trend. We've been on this trend for a while. So a coach for the next 10 years needs to know right now that's what's happening. Let's talk about the ATP, that defensive return position. We all know it, Rafa, and we're doing it. But now all of a sudden, Daniel Medvedev is further back. It's a trend that's happening all along. We can no longer just teach return to serve as the basic technique by the baseline. Mm-hmm. We have to put them back there. So the coach of the future for 10 years, I just gave you two examples. I could go on forever on this topic, has to be able to have his own style, his own identity, his own core values, his own vision of technique, in our case, within the system of the IMG, the whole, and then be able to follow trends so that the young players are coming up following the trend of the ones that are happening now and going to go into the future. I don't see that changing anytime soon, Fernando. They're physical, they're 6 foot, whatever. And they're moving like what used to be a small person.
Yeah.
And they're hitting from these extreme positions. So the coach of the future must be able to work with that. They're sliding on hard courts like it's nothing, right? The physical needs to match that, so they're preventing injuries. The coach of the future for 10 years must take all these things in play with his own style, communicate it well, but have a clear vision of where tennis is going. And I think that's one area we have tried to be ahead on, not behind. And it was started with Nick Bollettieri with the put away forehand, his trademark, and is followed up with aggressive weapons. Doesn't matter which style of play you are, you have to put the ball away if it's in the service box. It's followed by serving bigger, going for free points, because we know second serve is pretty much irrelevant on the WTA tour. It's 50-50 who wins. So you may as well go for free points on first serve. On the men's side, developing an aggressive second serve. Be willing to risk a double fault to win the point. So I'm trying to give you a few examples of the modern day coach for the next 10 years.
Yeah, and which is now very particular, probably in 10 years will be the standard, like you say, no? Red, what do you think about the new rule of the ATP about coaching? Because you belong to the old generation, but anyway, I have to ask.
I love it. I'm glad you asked. I didn't know if you were going to ask it. I'm very passionate about this. I think it's a great move. Okay. I don't think that I don't know that it was really preventing anything. If someone wanted to coach, they were doing it anyhow. I'm not crazy about the one guideline they put in there about a phrase versus the only thing is you can't hinder the person time-wise that's getting ready to play. I don't like that the umpire still has to be making a judgment call of whether you said too much or too little, as long as it doesn't slow the game down. But for me, now it makes us as a coach very important, because if you don't say nothing, you just stand there. I want to know that if I said something that was wrong, put it on me. I want to know if I said something and I helped the player, that's great. Because what I think is the player is first. It's not about me, the coach. It's always about the player. And I'm only trying to help the player. I'm actually running from the spotlight. I don't want to be. Nothing should ever take spotlight away from the player. But about the rule, I think it's healthy for our sport. I think it's good. I don't think there's any way to enforce that rule throughout the various levels of tennis. Go to a local tournament somewhere. It's healthy. I think they need to incorporate it straight down and make tennis more interesting on that. I'm glad you asked. I'm a big supporter of that.
Absolutely. And also it's giving us more credibility like a sport, no? Because we are more transparent, because coaching, we know that in some way did happen, many, many times, but now you are able to do it, no? Which is good for our sport.
It's good for our sport.
Yeah. Red, last question, which is a personal question, because you spend all your life in our sport. Let me ask you, did you enjoy the ride in tennis?
Yeah, so it's a two-part answer. I love what I do, Fernando. I can't wait to end this so I can go back and get ready for the next session of coaching. I love what I do. I've loved the journey. I told you at the beginning, God has blessed me and put me in positions I never thought were ever attainable. I just wanted to coach, wanted to try to work with a player. I never knew what level that was. And I am so motivated to try to help the next generation of players, the next generation of coaches. I want them to be better than me. I think many of them already are, and I want them to get better. I love what I do. I can't wait to get to coaching. I don't think it's a job. I don't put hours on it. I love it. And if today, by being on your podcast, if one person sees this and is motivated and goes out and does something to help someone, then me and you have spent good quality time together, because that was my reason for coming on today.
Thank you very much, Red, to be in our podcast. It was a privilege for us. Thank you also for all the things that you did for tennis, you are doing for tennis, but more you're going to do for our sport. Thank you very much, Red.
Thank you again for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you to all our audience. This is a project which is creating a bridge to bring more awareness, more growth to our sport, bringing the top leaders, the top coaches, and sharing stories about what it takes to be a high-performing person. Thank you very much, Red. And thank you also to Tennis One, GPTCA, and Segal Intitute, which are making possible to have our tennis talk with you. Thank you very much.
I am Alberto Castellani, President of GPTCA, Global Professional Tennis Coach Association. Learn from the best ATP coaches in the world. I hope that at the end of this course you will learn a lot of things. I hope that I will see you on the circuit with your player. This is the goal.